Alright students, let's talk about the second part of this question, which is for 12 marks. The question is, if an economy is experiencing inflation, discuss the views that its government should be more concerned about external effects than its effect within the domestic economy. So they're talking about the internal versus external effect of inflation on the economy. Now this is a bit technical question because we have to incorporate multiple topics in order to answer these questions with a good logic. So the first thing we have to explain here is the concept of the closed or the open economy. Now let me explain you what is the concept of closed or open economy. See, the closed economy is where local goods and services are preferred and consumed rather than importing from other countries. For example, Iran is focused on their domestic production. They import very few items. Most of the items are actually produced and consumed locally in Iran. As on the other hand, a country like Pakistan is mainly based on the imported products, imported factor of production, imported raw material. So we are the open economy. We believe in trading from other countries, and this is how it is. So it actually highly depends that whether the government should be concerned more about the external effect of inflation or internal effect of inflation on the type of economy that is under the discussion. So if, let's say, we are talking about Iran should be concerned about internal effect of the inflation. Of the internal effect means the domestic market, the effect on the domestic market, because they're highly dependent on the domestic market. On the other hand, if we are talking about Pakistan, we should be more concerned about the external effects of the inflation, means the effect that will the negative effect on our economy due to inflation by having a negative impact through imported products. Now let me explain you how this is going to happen. See, if if you have a closed economy, so which means that you're depending on local goods and services, internal inflation effects of inflation or the effect on domestic market is more critical. Why? Because inflation, if it is especially cost plus inflation, what will happen that you will have less consumption, there will be less investment in the economy, there will be less government expenditure. So if these three main components of aggregate demand or GDP are going to be affected, what will happen that you will have a lower GDP and the overall economy will be undermined. On the other hand, if you have the open economy, then you have to focus on the external effects. Why? Because such kind of countries like Pakistan, we depend on imported goods and services. External is more critical in this case when products are exported. If the products that you are exporting to other countries are elastic, it means that if there's an inflation in your country, that those products will become more expensive for export as well. So if those products are price elastic, what is going to happen that people will not purchase products from your country. They'll start searching for the alternate suppliers of other countries so that they can get the cheaper product. And at the same time, if your imports are inelastic, so that is what will happen, that the decrease in the price of those products won't have a very significant impact. But if your imports are elastic as well, what will happen that now relatively the imports will become cheaper for you. Now if the imports will become cheaper for you, what will happen that we'll start importing more to Pakistan. What will be the effect of that? So I have explained you, export will be expensive. Of course, exports will go down, and at the same time, price of imported products will be comparatively less. Imports will go up. So as a result, what will happen that our net export will go down. If our net export will go down, our balance of trade will be undermined. Of course, it will go down as well, and as a result, our balance of payment will also go down. So external effect of inflation will be mainly on the component of X minus M, and that will cause a destruction or at least a negative effect on the balance of payments. So for countries with the open economy, they should focus on the external effect of inflation. For the countries with closed economy, should have more focus towards internal effects of inflation or the effects on the domestic market. Now this is the first part of the answer. Now we can also talk about we are actually evaluating the answer at the same time we are explaining the answer. So the technique of answering such questions is a little bit different from regular questions. So we are evaluating at the same time when we are answering the question. So we won't have to give a separate evaluation in these kind of answers. Now second part is basically the third part basically is type of exchange rate. So it also depends on the type of exchange rate that the country is actually following at that specific time. So if the country has a fixed exchange rate system, what will happen that if the country decides not to go for devaluation, if they do not devalue their currency, what is going to happen that their products will become comparatively more expensive in other countries, and the products in other countries will become comparatively less expensive in the domestic market. So in this case, the balance of trade will even worsen more. So in fixed exchange rate, until and unless the government decides to go for devaluation, it becomes very dangerous. The external effect of inflation is very dangerous. At the same time, if you have on the other hand, if you have floating exchange rate, what happens that once there's an inflation in your country, the demand for your product is shifted leftward in the international market, and automatically the demand for your currency is also shift leftward. This causes a drop in the exchange rate. So the exchange rate of your currency is going to go down because of the lower demand of your currency. If exports are elastic, what is going to happen that the drop in the exchange rate will make your country or your product again more attractive due to a lower exchange rate. Now your product will be cheaper in the international market due to decrease in the exchange rate, and as a result what will happen, your export is going to increase. And at the same time, if your imports are also elastic, what will happen that since other currencies are going to be more expensive, they will have a very high exchange rate, the imported products will become expensive, and if they are elastic, your imports will go down and your balance of payment will become better. So it depends on many factors, but the main factors which you should answer in the question is basically about the type of economic system. Do you have closed economy, or you have an open economy? And of course, the point that I forgot to explain, there is a small point that if the factors of production are local or imported. So for example, if I'm producing something in Pakistan, let's say I'm producing PVC. PVC is a kind of a plastic which is a byproduct of petroleum industry, and if I'm importing the raw material from other countries, let's say Gulf countries, and there's inflation in Pakistan, what will happen that my exchange rate will go down, which I have explained in the floating exchange rate system, and as a result what will happen that those factors of production will become expensive for me. So it will have a negative internal as well as external effect. So in few cases we have external as well as internal effect, in few cases we only have internal effect, and in the other type of cases we only have external effect. So you have to give the answer, you have to give all the possibilities, and if you are successful in giving all the possibilities, you can easily gain 10 to 12 marks in these kind of questions. That's about it for this question. Thank you.